Welcome those of you who have joined us here in person at Unity Monroe. Thank you for coming out this first Sunday of May. And those of you who are watching, whatever you're watching, God bless you. Thank you for tuning in on this first Sunday of May. It is a time of gathering. It's a time of kind of understanding a little bit more of who we are, what we are. Today I'm kind of tying my lesson in with what I talked about last week a little bit. So when you think about, as I talked about last week, gratitude, and you think about things like your financial situation, the financial situation of our country, our world, I don't look at the financial pages or stuff on the internet or whatever very often, hardly ever at all. I've always been a kind of a trusting soul that, this thing that I'm invested in is okay. Our IRA is good, the stocks maybe I have, all of those wonderful things. But occasionally I think it's good to get an idea of just where things like the stock market is when it comes to understanding and owning our own prosperity. So today's stock market report, helium was up, in case you were wondering, feathers were down, paper was stationary, okay? Fluorescent lighting was dimmed in light trading. Yes. Thank you for the booze. Knives were up sharply. Yes, they were. Cows steered into a bull market, obviously. Elevators rose while escalators continued their slow decline. Absolutely. Light switches were off. Yes, they were. Mining equipment hit rock bottom. And for some reason, the market for raisins dried up. And Coca-Cola fizzled. Coca-Cola fizzled. Finally, Pampers diapers remained unchanged. So with that thought in mind, you may be kind of checking your own stock market, your own stocks that you have. In spite of that, what we have in where we are right now is certainly some interesting days that we're living through, some uncertain days, shall we say. And so we live with a sense of uncertainty when it comes to prosperity, when it comes to looking at, the gas station and you see the sign, it says almost $5 a gallon, maybe a sense of uncertainty for that, or food prices which have gone steadily up and some uncertainty in that too. The question is, as a true student, is a person who tries to understand to the very best of their ability how these things impact our life, we ask ourselves this question: how does this impact me? How do I, as a true student, understand the role of prosperity in my life, abundance in my life? So today is about, shall we say, claiming this idea of what is the truth. What is the truth of my soul, the wisdom of God within, the truth of each one of us as a beloved part of the realm of God, versus facts, which are the things out here that we sometimes often see. Facts that sometimes bring confusion, facts that sometimes bring fear. When you look at something that says, this is X amount of dollars, or when you look at something that says this is going to cost you even more than it did last year, that can bring a sense of fear or confusion or doubt. But the truth of our being is something greater and grander than that. The truth of our being is that you and I were all endowed with a creative mindset, an ability then to rise up and to go beyond these things, the facts, so that we may see and be present in the realm of God, present in the fullness of God. What I mean by this is that we find that sense of truth by declaring our prosperity, by declaring our oneness with Spirit. And it all comes down to the fact that life is consciousness. Our consciousness determines how we see ourselves as an abundant, prosperous soul. You've heard me say this before, and Carol has as well in some of her classes, that our consciousness is simply the sum total of what we think. What do I think about my prosperity? What do I think when I see a gas price at $5? How do I feel? What does it make you feel like? Do you feel less than? Or do you feel more empowered by the Spirit of God within you? And then finally, what do you believe about yourself and others? About the power of a prosperous nation, or the power of a prosperous world, or the power of a prosperous universe. So all of that goes into the playing of our consciousness that lays things out for us. Our consciousness affects how we see things and feel. That's why it's important to remember the sum total of what we think, feel, and see and believe about the world around us, ourselves as well. I've gone through that experience as well, as I was sharing earlier before we began the service, this idea of, being a unity minister, or being any kind of minister in most instances. We don't get in it for the fame and the fortune, We get in it because we're moved by heart and soul. We're moved by a willingness or a want to give back in some way, shape, or form. And as I've shared over the years, you may not have known, but there were times when I needed to kind of supplement my income. Most of the time it was done through, weddings and different things like that. But there were times when I had to, work with my friend Jim in his financial services company, or maybe it was working at the school that my kids went to, or maybe it was working for a marketing firm, a number of different things. Not totally, but there were times when it was just necessary and needed. And I've learned a lot about prosperity. I've learned about this idea of how consciousness rules. Maybe you've heard me say before, and maybe you feel this as well. There have been times in my life where I was going through poor experiences. Something that wasn't, happening in my life. And you'd look at that and you say, well, I feel kind of poor, but I was only broke. I was never poor. And that's the thing that I always had to remember. There have been times when we've been broke, right? You look at your checking account and you got, $7 in it? You say, oh, I'm broke. But we are never poor. Now, what do I mean by that? We're never poor in consciousness. We're never poor in that connection we have in the mind of God. We're never poor with those divine angelic thoughts. And those are the thoughts that empower us, that move us in the direction of our good, of our abundance, our prosperity. So we may be broke, but we're never poor. Never poor. Charles Fillmore, co-founder of Unity, said these words that I think maybe it may have riled some people, maybe it was you or someone else, but when you think about this phrase that he said, poverty is a disease, a disease. Now notice the way it's being said there. This is not something derogatory toward someone who is going through a poverty moment in their life, a poor moment in their life, a broke moment in their life. What is he saying? He's saying poverty is a dis-ease of mind and heart. And when I or you are in a dis-ease moment, it's hard to connect with the divine. We're always connected with the divine, but it's hard to hear that message, that insight, that wisdom. This idea of poverty is a dis-ease. It's a dis-ease because we are struggling. And when we struggle, our mind cannot be connected. Our heart is troubled. This is why the more time we spend in quiet and contemplation or just listening to our soul, the more we get out of that dis-ease of mind and heart. Our mind is not at peace, we're not at peace, and our emotions are churned up. I certainly felt that the other day when I looked at that $4.99 on the gas thing and filled my tank, and it was over $50. I'm like, whoa. Never been that high before. So yeah, there was a little bit of a dis-ease there. So to transcend whatever, feeling we may have, financial difficulty, we got to turn that around. We got to look at things and release those hindrances we have towards something, whatever it may be. What does that tell us about our consciousness? It is the consciousness of life that elevates, that's elevated. See, I could spend all day looking at a sign, a gas sign, or a sign from a department store or from a grocery store, and I can lay blame here and there. Okay, we do that. But that blame, that sense of guilt or shame, I remember when I came back to Cincinnati, to this area, to Southwest Ohio, and taking a job away from what I normally thought I would be doing, which was ministry. But I was in between ministries, so taking a job back at a place I'd worked before in retail management. And there was a little bit of that blame, shame, guilt kind of game I played with myself. And I had to let that go. I had to say, this is not part of who I am. This is not part of my truth. This is the fact right now to make money, to survive. But I knew the truth, and I am no different than anyone else, just as you are, as we go through these interesting times, shall we say. So it's about consciousness, the way we think and feel and process things. That realization that as we affirm and know God's truth and wisdom within us, we are elevated. Many of you are familiar with, a wonderful story in the book of Genesis, the story of Jacob in the book of Genesis, where he has to wrestle with an angel. And I like that story, wrestling with an angel, because it tells us something. It says, I'm not going to let you go, angel. Again, this is metaphorical language being used. I'm not going to let you go until what? You bless me. I'm not going to let you go until you give me your blessing. We have had that situation time and again, have we not? Where an angelic thought, an idea, divine inspiration comes to us and through us, and we have to process it. And maybe we say in our own declaration, I am not going to let you go, angelic thought, divine idea, inspiration. I am not going to let you go until you bless me, until that truth about my soul is revealed. All of that other stuff out here, prices, economy, war, all of that is important, yes. But it is the world of effects, the world of inspiration and truth and wisdom is within. So outer effects say one thing. This is the fact. I'm not denying that. But what we are affirming and knowing is the truth and the wisdom from within, as it says in the book of Luke. Do not be seized with alarm, and I picked this one in particular because I like the way it says this. Do not be seized with alarm or struck with fear, little flock. For it is your Father's, and again that's Jesus' term of endearment for God, Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Do not be seized with alarm or struck with fear. And you think of being seized up in some way. It's almost like a mind lock, Your mind can't process and think clearly. So the more we put the power in the things out here, the less we are able to process and hear the voice of the angel within, the voice of reason, the voice of the divine inspiration. So the realm of God is what we're talking about here. Give you the kingdom, the realm of God. What is the realm of God? The inspiration of God, the mind of God, the ideas of God, all of that goes into play. I've told the story before. This seems to be one of these lessons of a little more personal to me because of some of the things that I've gone through and grown through. And I've told the story before about being in ministerial school and having to let go of a few things that I had to let go of, like a job. I was going through ministerial school, yes, and I was about ready to graduate. It was like 4 months away. Having to let go of some sort of monetary thing that brought money in, and I was paying for my own education and where I was living and everything like that. So, yeah, I let that go. And then it was that one weekend. You know what I'm talking about? That one weekend when I was kind of broke. And I actually had, did not have enough money on my ATM to even take out $10, friends. I had $7. $7. That was what you shall call a lean weekend. Thank goodness for the friendliness of strangers or strangeness of friends. I don't know. That Monday, as I'm in class and we had these lockers behind us with these mailboxes, as I go to my mailbox, get a cup of coffee, and classes go from 8 to 2 or 3 o'clock, depending on the electives. And so as I go to this locker and I check my mailbox, there's 2 things in there. 2 things. Now, mind you, $7 in my banking account. But I wasn't afraid. I wasn't fearful. I was grateful for what I had in that moment. But there I am, facing these 2 letters, opening the first one, a $500 check from my grandmother in Michigan. I opened the second one, another $500 check, friends, from some anonymous source that gave to the school, and the school decided, Greg, you need $500. So on that Saturday, Sunday of that weekend, $7. On that Monday, here comes $1,000. What me worry? No. And the same is true for all of us, just placing our confidence in consciousness, if you will. Many of you may be familiar with a woman who is an author and unity minister. I think, Carol, you may have done one of her classes, Edwene Gaines. And in one of her books, she wrote The 4 Spiritual Laws of Prosperity. She writes this. She says, God wants us to do more, to have more, to play big. Okay? Play big. Remind yourself of that, Greg, to play big. Absolutely. And all of us. God doesn't want us to deny our desires. That's where it comes from. After all, God put those desires in us as we are attuned to that wisdom, that spirit. And we must celebrate them. Life is not about struggling, about being unhappy, and then dying. It's about what? It's about enjoying and appreciating everything life has to offer. That's why I like today's daily word about life. L'chaim, to life. Give it your all. It's there to press itself out into us in every way, shape, and form. What does it require of us? I think one of the most important things it requires is simply faith. Trust in the process. Not in the things out here, but trust and have faith in the wisdom of God within you. I was looking at something online earlier this week, and I saw they're building this new building, crazy looking building in New York City. Could you imagine that, a new building in New York City? But they're building this new building, and it's interesting design. But one of the things they're doing way up at the top is they're putting one of those external rooms, shall we say, that you can walk out on, a glass room, kind of like this. Now, I've actually been in that because that's the Hancock Center, John Hancock Center. It used to be called the John Hancock Center in Chicago. And I've been in the one at the old Sears Willis Tower as well. And it's that glass enclosure. It's actually attached to the building, by the way, for instance. Carol, you didn't know it's attached. It's not an elevator. And so you walk out there, and the first thing you look down is you see glass. And you see the street, 96 stories below you. And there's something in the mind, it triggers like, don't do this. But you kind of walk out and you deal with it. And what does it require? It requires, maybe lunacy? I don't know. It requires faith. It requires faith, and here's everybody going like this, is this real here? And it certainly is. So you walk out. And you have that faith, that trust. And that's very similar to where we are right now when it comes to our abundance, our prosperity, when it comes to the economy of our country, our world, where we are in the war or whatever we may be going through, is to trust in this process, to know that divine order is established, but also that God moves through us. The realm of God is right here and right now. The truth is that God always works in us, through us, inspiring us, moving us in direction of our good. Yeah, it may feel a little scary to trust in that first step, but we are always, always, always supported, friends. Always, because it is God's good pleasure to give you the keys to the kingdom, the realm of the kingdom, the realm of consciousness. So let's invite ourselves right now to entertain that and enter into these moments of quiet and contemplation. I'm just going to invite you to sit back and relax and just close your eyes and begin to entertain this idea. As you begin to relax in this moment, to sit back, to close your eyes, to find a comfortable place where you are seated, with your feet firmly in front of you on the floor, with your hands by your side. And take a moment just to process this time, this place, this space where you are. And take a moment to breathe in. And then let that go and breathe out. To be inspired is to bring the very breath of spirit, the breath of life, the breath of the engaged soul that I am in this moment. Breathing in and breathing out. I feel that pattern, that flow of the divine. For it truly does uplift my soul. It brings inspiration. The inspiration to find that place and space of peacefulness. That peacefulness that is activated and enlivened through quiet moments, through moments of engagement with life. I trust in the power of my faith. I trust in this engaging power that allows me to see beyond and into the realm of God, the state of heavenly bliss. All that is and all that has been and shall be is colored by my consciousness, my awareness. What I feel and hold near in my heart is part of that evolution of consciousness. I let that power of faith be quickened in choices that I make, in ways that I attend to life itself as a spiritual, loving soul. And so I lead first in love. For love binds together, brings forth, and affirms and knows the abundance of life itself. I invite myself now to affirm those words once again of abundance, of living in and through the dance of angelic thoughts that lift me up, that show direction for my life, that inspires wonder, and knowing that I live in and through the realm of God and heavenly thoughts. I am prospered in all ways, in all that I think, say, and do. And so I invite myself in this moment just to sit in the quiet and in this moment of observation and contemplation, to know that each moment is a divinely prospered moment. In the silence. And so in this holy moment, I affirm the good that is created through how I observe, how I feel, how I see, how I reason with life, to life and all of its glory and its wonder. And I am inspired and moved and directed in this wonderful dance. Yes, loving Spirit, I affirm the abundant good coursing through every faith-filled step and direction, and so it is. Amen.